And a short time ago, the Shadow Communications Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, joined me from Canberra. Malcolm Turnbull, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you.
The government says it can't release its business plan on the NBN until December, as it's yet to go to Cabinet. It contains market-sensitive information and the competition watchdog is still assessing it. How is that not reasonable?
Well, they're just all pathetic excuses. If the government was serious about getting the Parliament's support for this legislation, it would be fully transparent. This business belongs to the people of Australia. The Parliament are the people's representatives. We and the people of Australia are entitled to know what the business plan is for this $43 billion investment.
How is it a pathetic excuse, though, to suggest that we have to wait a couple of weeks, as I said, until we get the competition watchdog's full assessment on it, and also to deal with information that's market sensitive? Why are those pathetic excuses?
Because the government is saying that the Parliament must pass the NBN legislation this week, but they're not prepared to provide the business plan or the business case. Now, if the government wanted an extra few weeks to read the business case, well, it could postpone the finalisation of the legislation until after the business case had been published and everyone had been able to absorb it. So the government is the one that's made this excuse pathetic, because it's saying it is absolutely urgent that you, the members of Parliament, pass this legislation, but we're not going to show you the business case. And by the way, the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister and the Infrastructure Minister in the House have all indicated today and yesterday that they haven't even read the business case themselves. So you really have to ask yourself, this government seems to have lost control of any sense of responsible direction. I mean, how on earth can the Prime Minister be recommending this project when she hasn't read the business case? How can she be conscientiously asking the Parliament to approve it when she won't make that business case available?
Is there ever a situation in which it would be valid for a government not to release a business case for a particular policy?
Well, I can't speculate, but this is not national security. You know, this is a straightforward telecommunications project, like there are many other telecommunications projects around the world, and indeed that have been built in Australia. This is not going to be competitive with anyone. The government is setting it up as a monopoly, so there aren't competitive concerns. Really, they should put all the cards on the table. And look, I can say to you, someone that's been involved in public companies for many years, a public company, a listed company, that was undertaking a major project of this kind would have to put all of the financial information out into the public domain. It would have to persuade its shareholders that the investment was going to be good for them in terms of dividends and share price, and it would have to take on scrutiny and questioning from analysts. Now, why is a lower standard being applied to the Government of Australia when it's dealing with taxpayers' money and the biggest infrastructure project in our history?
I seem to recall, though, Mr Turnbull, the Coalition not releasing the costings for its election policies during the campaign and seeing that as completely valid.
Well, it's a completely different situation. What we're talking about here is a government that is proposing to spend and is committing to spend $43 billion of taxpayers' money. Can I just bring this back, though, to what the fundamental issue is here? Everybody has agreed that Australians should have universal and affordable access to broadband. The question is, what is the most cost-effective and efficient way of delivering that, which will impose the lowest cost on taxpayers? That is the task, the question the government has never asked. That is what we want the Productivity Commission to do. Because the one thing that is clear is that even if you accept that this NBN will deliver universal and affordable access to broadband, and that's very questionable, even if you accept that, this is certainly by far the most expensive way of doing it. Now, we believe there are much cheaper, more cost-effective ways of achieving this, so let's get the Productivity Commission to examine that, and then we can be sure that we're not going to waste tens of billions of dollars on infrastructure that is not needed to achieve the objective of universal and affordable broadband.
OK, but of that $43 billion, the cost to the taxpayer is going to be about $26 billion over 8 years. That's about $3.25 billion a year. That's about a quarter of the yearly amount that we spend on both welfare and health, and roughly equal to the defence budget. Don't you think that Australians in remote areas, if they do end up with high-speed, reliable broadband, will consider that to be money pretty well spent? OK,
well, let me disagree with you on a couple of points. Every cent that is spent on this NBN will be at the expense of the taxpayer. If the NBN borrows money, it will borrow that money on the credit of the Commonwealth of Australia. So the notion that the cost is going to be anything less than $43 billion is just not valid. Any borrowings will be effectively government borrowings.
But people will be paying for that service. There will be revenue from it.
Yeah, let me go on. Secondly, as far as remote areas are concerned, we had a policy back in 2007 to provide broadband to the bush, the Opel project. If that had been implemented, broadband would be available there now. Nobody argues with the proposition that there has to be government subsidy to provide broadband services across rural and remote Australia. But the cost of that is a very small part of the $43 billion. This is not... You've got to remember, what the government is proposing to do here is to overbuild and render redundant our entire fixed-line telecommunications network. And in doing so, it is going to preclude or prohibit Telstra and Optus from competing with the NBN with their cable networks. So it is going to be creating a massive government-owned telecoms monopoly, and then use the power of the Parliament and of government to prevent anybody competing with it. That can only have the result of increasing internet access prices for Australians. So, yes, it will provide a universal service, but I believe it will be less affordable than what we have today.
The Coalition's broadband policy that it took to the election was heavily criticised, and Christopher Pyne said afterwards that you would be tweaking it. When will we know exactly what you actually advocate rather than what you oppose?
No, I've set out I can tell you exactly what I advocate. I believe that the customer access network of Telstra should be separated from the retail business. That should be constituted as an independent utility that has pricing security from a regulator, the ACCC, like a gas utility or an electricity or water utility. It should have a mandate to ensure that all of those areas in Australia that do not have access to at least 12 megabits per second broadband achieve that, and insofar as those areas require a government subsidy because it's not economic to do it, that subsidy would be provided. Now, all of that can be done. It will provide all of the competition benefits, the structural separation benefits. All of that can be done at a cost to the taxpayer that is a very small fraction of the $43 billion.
If you support the structural separation of Telstra, why is the Coalition voting against this bill that's currently before the Parliament and holding it hostage to your concerns about the NBN?
Well, this bill is all about the NBN, Lee. I mean, yes, it is about structural separation, but it is also all about the NBN. I mean, it is an NBN bill. And, you know, our big concern is structural separation is a big issue, it's a good issue, but the elephant in the room, the $43 billion elephant in the room, is this massive infrastructure expenditure that the government is undertaking without any cost-benefit analysis, notwithstanding there's many statements that such analyses are necessary, and without even publishing or apparently reading the business case that supports it.
Well, on the cost-benefit analysis issue, your policy that you just outlined for me, have you had that submitted for cost-benefit analysis by anybody?
Well, we're in opposition, Lee, but I can assure you that that it would cost I can guarantee it'll cost a tiny fraction of the $43 billion. But look, you don't have
to take my word for it. But I'll have to take your word on it, won't I?
No, you don't have to take my word for it. That's why I want the Productivity Commission to do its cost-benefit analysis, because what the Productivity Commission would do, they would say, OK, the objective is universal and affordable broadband. What are the possible ways of achieving that? And they would look at those and rank them in terms of cost, in terms of effectiveness, speed to market, and all of those criteria. And that would be the way a rational and responsible government would approach this. You see, the NBN is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end, the end being universal and affordable broadband. The government has confused the means with the end. and that what they should be focused on is the end or the goal, universal and affordable broadband. We've all signed up to that. So let's now get acknowledged experts at this kind of work, the Productivity Commission, to examine which is the most cost-effective way of achieving that.
I want to ask you about gay marriage. You gave a speech in the Parliament during the recent debate and said that you support the traditional view of marriage as being between a man and a woman. We know that you're passionately committed to equal rights, so I don't need you to repeat yourself on that. But why do you view marriage traditionally?
Well, I think marriage has been the definition of marriage has been for thousands of years a union between a man and a woman. There's no doubt that views of marriage have changed over the years, and the law relating to men and women in marriage has changed dramatically over the years. So I think this issue of same-sex unions, same-sex marriages is one that is very live, and it's one that I'm looking at with a very open mind. I mean, as I've said several times publicly, over the years I've argued, and I believe effectively, to ensure that equal rights are given to same-sex couples, so that nowadays, at the federal level at least, a same-sex couple has the same rights under law as a heterosexual couple that are married, under the provisions of the federal law. But the same-sex couple cannot describe themselves as being married. That is essentially the difference. Now, that is the issue that is before us. I've not supported gay marriage in the past, but I recognise that views have changed on a lot of these issues, and I'm approaching it with a very open mind. I'm talking to my constituents and also investigating the issue very carefully. But I have to say, if gay marriage had been an element in the reform agenda for same-sex couples in years past, that reform agenda would not likely have been achieved. So, there have been practical reasons for people to focus on on substantive equality rather than focusing on marriage per se.
You say you have an open mind and you're talking to constituents. Does that mean if you're persuaded that a majority of constituents in your seat think that there should be gay marriage, that you'd be willing to move to that position yourself?
Well, I've always been happy to change my mind if I believe, that the view I had is no longer appropriate. And as I think it was it Keynes that said, I change my opinion when the facts change, and if community attitude's a big part of this. I mean, it's not, you go back 40-odd years, and my father-in-law, Lucy's dad, Tom Hughes, when he was Attorney General, gave what was regarded as a controversial speech, quite a controversial speech, saying that homosexual acts should not be criminal. Now, we've come an enormous way in 40 years.
What would be the impact on Australian society if gay marriage were allowed?
Well, I think that's really what the issue is. There are arguments. There are many people that would say it'll make no difference at all. It's essentially a symbolic issue, and I thought there was a very persuasive contribution made by a young Muslim woman on Q&A recently, when she said that as a Muslim, she believed that marriage was between a man and a woman. So she didn't believe that, from her own religious point of view, she didn't believe it was could be between two people of the same sex. But she said, look, the state is not a religious organisation. The state is essentially licensing a union between two people, and she didn't feel that religious considerations should impact on what the state does. And I thought that was a very eloquent case put for the argument in favour of gay marriage. But there are equally compelling arguments made on the other side. So the important thing is people expect me to take my responsibilities seriously and think about these things deeply and consult widely, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm sure all members of Parliament and all senators are doing the same.
Malcolm Turnbull, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Lee.